The first time I met Ryan Matthews, I never expected that his presence would leave such an imprint on my life. I was 28, caught in the routine rhythm of a small-town existence, and he was the kind of man you noticed even if you tried not to. Tall, confident, with a way of carrying himself that made people lean closer when he spoke. Ryan wasn't just another face in our community. He was the new history teacher at the high school, and though I was no longer a student, my younger brother Michael was in his class. At that point in my life, I was managing the town's bookstore, a quaint little place my late father had started years before. I loved books, but I loved stories even more, especially the ones people hid behind polite smiles and casual greetings. Everyone carried secrets, and I had a terrible habit of paying too much attention to them. I was good at reading people, at noticing the hesitation in their voice, the way their eyes shifted when they said something that wasn't completely true. But Ryan wasn't easy to read. He came into the bookstore one rainy afternoon, the kind of day where the gray skies pressed heavily against the windows. I remember the way his jacket dripped water onto the wooden floor, his dark hair damp, his eyes scanning the shelves with curiosity. He walked like he belonged anywhere, and that unsettled me because I often felt like I didn't quite belong anywhere. "Do you have any biographies of Lincoln?" he asked, his voice steady and warm. I led him to the section, pretending not to notice how my heart skipped when his arm brushed against mine as he reached for a book. He smiled, polite and distant, but there was something in his gaze that made me feel as though he already knew I carried secrets of my own. That night, I thought about him more than I should have. Over the next few weeks, Ryan became a regular at the bookstore. Sometimes he came in for lesson materials, sometimes just to browse. We talked casually about literature, history, and the quirks of small-town life. He had an easy laugh, the kind that made you want to tell him things, even things you weren't supposed to share. And that's how it started, with me playing with secrets, testing the waters of how much I could reveal, without saying too much. I told him things about customers, about the books that never sold, about my own struggles with keeping the store afloat. He listened in a way most people didn't. And in return, he shared pieces of his life too. How he'd moved from Chicago after a difficult breakup, how teaching wasn't just a career for him but a way to connect with people. But one evening, when the store was quiet and the world outside was slipping into twilight, he caught me in a moment that changed everything. I was standing behind the counter, writing in my journal. It wasn't a diary in the traditional sense. It was a collection of observations, thoughts, and yes, secrets. Things I noticed about people. Things I never intended anyone else to read. But Ryan came in silently, the bell above the door muffled by the storm outside, and before I could close the journal, his eyes landed on the page. "You watch people closely," he said softly, not accusing, but curious. I froze, embarrassed. "It's just something I do. A bad habit, maybe." He tilted his head, studying me. "No. It's a gift. But dangerous too, don't you think? When you know things about people they never meant for you to know." I felt my face flush. He wasn't wrong. And in that instant, I knew he had seen through me more than anyone ever had. That night became the turning point. What began as cautious conversations turned into longer talks that stretched past closing time. Sometimes we'd sit in the back room with cups of coffee, the sound of rain or wind filling the silence between us. He told me about his regrets, about the mistakes he had made in his past relationship, and how he was afraid of repeating them. And in return, I told him things I had never spoken aloud. The loneliness I felt since losing my father, the weight of running the bookstore alone, the fear that my life was passing by without ever really beginning. There was desire between us, unspoken at first, lingering in the pauses of our conversations and the way our hands brushed when passing a book. But there was also regret that came from knowing that stepping closer to each other meant stepping into dangerous territory. He was a teacher in town, respected and admired. I was a woman trying to hold her family together. If we gave in to what we both felt, there would be whispers, judgment, and consequences neither of us was prepared for. And yet, we couldn't stay away from each other. One evening, long after the town had gone quiet, he stayed to help me reorganize a shipment of books. The electricity flickered, then went out, leaving only the soft glow of candlelight we had lit for customers earlier. The shadows danced across the shelves, and for a moment, it felt like the whole world had disappeared, leaving just the two of us. He looked at me then, not as a customer, not as a friend, but as something more. "You're not as invisible as you think you are," he whispered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because in that instant, I knew I was standing on the edge of a decision that would change everything.